Hello, this is Annie, and welcome back to Downtown. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the overwhelmingly positive reaction to the previous video where I set the hood up for playing by creating the families, making the town is playable and so on. It seems like most of you are very interested in a Let's Play series in Downtown, and I for one can't wait to get started. This is going to be a lot of fun. And the first part of this is going to be some renovations, because before I can start playing with this hood, I need to have some proper houses for my Sims to live in. And yeah, my ideas for this is basically that I should make quite a few apartments. The way that I imagine downtown is very dense, with a lot of traffic, a lot of people milling around, going from place to place, and I think down the line there should be a lot of community lots as well. I for sure plan on making it as integrated as My Pleasant View is, with active schools and careers, and yeah, a big part of that is creating all kinds of lots and making interesting places for my Sims to go visit. But I also want to make a point of you don't have to start with that. And you probably shouldn't start with that when you start out a hood like this, because it can get overwhelming very fast. And the worst thing that can happen when you start out a hood like this is that you work yourself out of your motivation. That has certainly happened to me in the past, and I realized that it's very important to pace yourself when you do projects like this. And I think that the best thing to do when you start out a neighborhood is to take every measure possible to start playing as quickly as possible, to get to know your Sims, because when you have started to get to know your Sims, everything is going to change, because all of a sudden you're going to come up with new ideas for community lots that you want that Sim to go visit, or you come up with a perfect house that you want the family to live in, or you come up with a good community lot that you want a group of friends to meet up on, or an active career, or something like that, that just makes sense with the actual Sims that you have in the hood. And before you have actually started to play with the new hood that you created and with the Sims, then you're not going to have those realizations and it's not going to be, in my opinion anyway, as fun to build up the neighborhood. I have a lot of fun in my current Pleasant View, coming up with new lots to add, as I'm sure you've seen by now. I'm starting to get a little bit obsessed with it. And a big part of that is because I know my Sims now. I know what they want. I know what kind of places they want to go to, what kind of houses they want to live in. But before you know them, you're not going to have that knowledge. So I really recommend just plopping down some houses that you can place your families in and start playing with them, basically. So the initial phase of this Let's Play is going to be a series of speed builds where I renovate several houses at once to finish it as soon as possible. Mostly they're going to be apartments, but some houses possibly as well. And the first part of this, in this episode, is going to be sort of low rent, smaller apartments in the same small lot. We'll get to that a bit later. But first of all, I also wanted to start to map out the neighborhood, what it looks like, what kind of places I have my buildings, where should there be apartments, where should there be residential buildings, where should there be community lots and so on, and trying to logically figure out the layout of the town. And also make it look a bit appealing as well. Of course, a big part of that is adding in skylines and skies. Yeah, looking at the layout here, I wanted there to be an isolated part of the town where more of the residential and old buildings for the rich is going to be. And I didn't like the thought of the House of Fallen Trees to be just along that big road, so yeah, I want to move it to this sort of roundabout. So I think that this is going to be a nicer position for these kinds of builds. So this is sort of what the town looks like from above. And my idea is that coming from the different sides, like over the bridge and along the same road from the left, that is probably going to be where a lot of the traffic is coming from. And I think that a lot of the traffic is going to turn left and right up on the sides and drive upwards towards the high-rise buildings. And possibly that there's not going to be as much traffic in the middle lane. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not that big of a difference. But I think that along the across roads, it's not going to be as much traffic. So I think it would be clever to put down most buildings along those smaller roads, because I feel like that would be where people turn in, and where it would be a bit calmer. Then of course up to the left is going to be where the sort of the rich district is, if you can call it that. And then on the opposite side to the right, in part you see there's a big loop. And I think that is a great piece of land to place down more housing. Could be residential buildings, but it can also be kind of apartments, but more like where most people live, I think. Possibly I'm going to put in like amenities here as well, like schools and other kinds of like hospital or police station or whatever I'm coming up with first for this hood. I think this would be a good place to put it, to get it sort of out of the way of the busy downtown area. And then there's also a dip and then a road that goes down to the water. And that's also opening up a lot of possibilities for some sort of beach area or a pier or some kind of different place to be. I'm also playing around with the idea of drawing connections between this downtown and the downtown that we saw in The Sims 1. In that downtown there actually was, I think, 2 beach lots. And it would make sense, I think, if there were similar lots here as well. It's possible that I could try to implement or build conversions of the lots in The Sims 1 and place them down here, but I think that's far in the future in that case. But it would be quite cool, I think. But as for this episode of renovations, I'm going to be renovating these 4 houses. And I am keeping them in this position because I think that it's actually an okay position for them, seeing as they're gonna be cheaper apartment lots. And I'm also thinking of putting in like similar houses opposite to them as well, so that when you come in to town in that part, there's still apartment buildings before you get to the actual commercial district. So let's start with the first building in the row. And this one is going to be the one that is the slowest going, because this is before I figured out sort of the layouting of how I wanted to build the houses. The only thing I knew from the start was that I wanted it to be apartments, and I wanted it to be apartments that enabled driveways as well for the Sims living on the bottom floor and the first floor. So that's sort of my starting point, and that's what I started to build from. And I tried to maintain the looks of the house, even though it's going to change quite a lot. I still wanted the doors to be in the same place. I still wanted the outer walls of the house to match quite similarly. I extended it a little bit to the left at the start to make it slightly bigger, but I'm going to bring it in again a bit later to make it smaller again. And the way that you see that the fences are outlining right now is my idea for how to make that back driveway available to the apartment on the first floor. And I was struggling a bit with this door before I realized that it didn't want to go there because I had forgotten to remove the roof. So once I figured that out, it worked fine placing it down. And the entrance to the bottom floor apartment is just going to be in the same position that the door was to the house from the start, just coming in from the road, basically straight in. That's where the entrance is going to be, and that's just a normal apartment door. Then there's going to be a separate stairwell for the upper floors going in at the back door. That was actually also already there from the start. So I figured that would be pretty nice to use that as a side entrance into the stairwell, and then that they could enter the apartments from there. And yeah, of course, from the start, I wasn't sure what kind of style I was going for with the house. I just knew that I wanted it to look a little bit cheap, not the most expensive place to live. So I tried out a bunch of different textures. Here I was going with some wooden textures for the stairs, and I was still having the paneled walls. Yeah, here you see I bring the size down again on the house. I just, for some reason, I just felt like it became too big. So I wanted to bring it down again and maintain the size that it was from the start. And here I also enclosed the second driveway for the bottom apartment. And I'm going to make a side door as well later that allows the Sims to access it as if it was the backyard, basically. And the thing about having driveways like this in apartments is that the animation of them pulling out from the driveway is not going to be there. It's going to be the car teleporting in and out of the lot, the Sims 3 style. That's the way that I figured out how to have usable driveways in apartments that's not connected to a garage. That you can actually put down the car on is doing it this way. So in the end, I went with a dark gray brick and some fencing around the roof, and that made the house feel completely different. But I think that it makes sense for this part of town, and I think that this style also makes a lot of sense for downtown. It feels like a house that you would find in a place like that. And I also decided to include I wouldn't really say a backyard, but a patio area for the bottom apartment as well. Because I figured that some Sims might want to have some sort of outdoors area for, I don't know, hanging out or eating dinner or possibly garden a little bit if they want. There certainly Sims like that, who enjoys those kinds of things. So it's nice to have that, even if it's a low-cost apartment like this. And here I changed around the style of the doors as well, because I finally figured out what kind of style I wanted for the doors and the windows and such. And then I'm starting on the layout of the apartment rooms. And this is always a struggle, because especially apartments, I think, it's so easy to create cramped areas. And the thing is also that once you have created it, it's such a hassle to redo it if you're not happy with it when you start playing with the house, because once you've moved the Sims in, you can't change around the walls without moving them out and changing the lot type back to residential. And you really don't want to mess this up before. So you want it to feel like a natural size of the rooms and the positioning of the doors, and you want enough light to come in through the windows, and it's a lot to keep in mind at once. Trying to also have spaces that make sense for, like, this is where a kitchen could go, this is enough space for a functional bathroom, this is a good space for a bedroom. And there's quite a few things to consider. Like, most Sims are gonna want to have double beds after all, and there's you have to have a certain size of room for that. I have actually experimented a bit with that. There are some beds with a very slim bed frame. I'm thinking of a bed from the IKEA set particularly, that if you play with walls up like I do, you can actually sneakily push the bed frame into the wall slightly, And that will allow you to place a double bed in a 3-tile room. So the Sims are actually going to be able to walk around the bed to the other side without extra mods if you do that. And I think I'm going to show you that probably when I furnish these apartments, because yeah, I bet that if I move in a single sim or like one of those families with a younger and an older sibling, it's possible that I'm going to need to furnish a smaller room like that for one of them. Yeah, that's pretty neat actually, that you can make that sort of solution. Yeah, and then I'm picking out the floors and the colors of everything. I actually kept the carpet that was in the house from the start. I felt that was a good connection to the original house, and it was actually a nice carpet. It fit in with the house, I think. And yeah, the coloring of the walls is just sort of like the standard for this house, and whenever the next tenant is moving in, then they can repaint the walls if they want, put up wallpapers and whatever. That kind of thing is still changeable in apartments, so that's gonna be fine. And one thing that's important to remember when you build apartments is what do you call them? Like where you throw away the trash inside the building. Yeah, like the trash shack or something. I'm not sure at all what it's called, but yeah, I put that in anyway in the stairwell. So there's one for each floor. And then I'm enclosing the entire lot with fencing as well, so that there are no random visitors wandering in. I think that in theory they can still do it anyway, but the idea is that it's supposed to be a private lot. It's in the middle of the city after all, so there should be some security. And at this stage, the only invisible fence that I had was one that unfortunately cast a shadow. So what you're going to see here are very sharp shadowing. And that's actually something that I went in and changed for the next house in line, because yeah, I couldn't stand that. And it was actually also a good opportunity, because I don't know how many times I've like lamented over the fact that I only have that very expensive invisible fence in my game that eats up a lot of my Sims money. Now I actually took the time to download an invisible fence without a mesh, so it doesn't cast a shadow at all, and also that has a 0 value. So yeah, it was a long time coming, but finally I have it in my game, and I couldn't be happier. So I'm going to use that throughout the next few lots, and it makes a big difference, really. Yeah, and I contemplated starting to furnish or like put in some garden decorations in the garden plot for the bottom apartment, but decided against it, because I figured that it would be more fun for the sim who moves in there to actually do all of that kind of stuff themselves, to mold it more to what they like and what kind of family it is. So I actually left that out. But I did put in lights in all of the apartments and around the lot. That's one thing that it's better to do it in everywhere, to light up the entire lot, so that you don't forget it to put it in the communal areas, which I tend to do. Yeah, so it's a lot better to do it everywhere. And yeah, no issues making this an apartment lot either. The cheat for doing that is change lot zoning, apartment base. And then we're moving on to the next house in line. And it looked very similar to the first, but it's slightly different in that the wall next to the entrance door is a bit curved, or well, diagonal, I should say, probably. So that creates a sort of different silhouette to the house once I've finished it as well. And you're going to notice that things are going a lot faster in this house, because now I've kind of mapped out the standard layout for these houses. So now I don't have as much to take into consideration when I'm building. I'm just sort of going by what I think is similar to the previous one, but dissimilar enough for it to feel like a different house. And one of the differences in this one is that I decided that probably the apartments in the first house were on the very small side, and the families that I've put together already have several people in them most of the time, if it's roommates or family members. And I figured that I needed some apartments that were bigger. So in this house, I decided to make 2-level apartments. So on this middle floor, you see that, or maybe you could see previously, now we're back, that this front part of the apartment is part of the first floor. And then the entrance to the second apartment is on that same floor, but at the back of the house. And then there's a staircase moving up to the second floor. So yeah, that's how this works. And that actually made this lot only have 2 apartments. But yeah, I think that I should go by number of rooms as well when I do these renovations, and try to keep the families in mind that I have. And that's also one of the reasons why I didn't just renovate one of the houses, put it into my lot bin, and then plop down a bunch of copies. Because yeah, they're all gonna be the same then, and it's gonna be very limited to what kind of families I'm gonna be able to put in. And I also find that having too many of the same building can be a bit boring as well when you start to play. Because no matter what family you play with, it's gonna feel like you're just back in the same place again. Of course, it's the easy way out to do it like that. And I've certainly done it plenty of times in the past. There was one time that I built a university hood where I made one like huge castle-like building for each faculty. So depending on what major the sim decided on, they would move into one of those buildings. And I got bored of building them because they were so huge and obnoxious. Even if they were a lot of fun to play in, they were a huge time investment to actually build. So what I ended up doing at the end, because there are like, how many majors are there? Like 12 or something like that. I ended up going with copies. And unfortunately, that ended up making it a bit boring in the long run, because then it just felt like I was back in the same building when I moved between faculties. So yeah, it's a sort of a double-edged sword. The more time you put into these kinds of things, the more fun you will potentially have down the line. But yeah, it's a bit of an investment, of course. So yeah, you really have to decide how to prioritize. So yeah, here you see the difference in having the new invisible fences with no shadows. It looks like 10 times better. But they're still there. You're not going to be able to see them, but I put in the fences exactly in the same spots as in the first building. So just around the parking spaces, basically. And then I'm putting in the street lights. I lined them out with the same sort of spacing, so it looks neat from the neighborhood view as well. I think that adds a lot of character, or adds a lot of like feeling of completeness when you look at the buildings from the hood as well, that the street lights are evenly lined up, because that's I think at least what you see in real life. That's the feeling I get, at least when I look at street lights, that they're evenly spaced out most of the time. Yeah, that's the second building done as well. And we're gonna move on to the third one in the line. And this one I wanted again to make a bit different from the first two. And again, I was in the mind of like the big families that I had created. Not that they're that big, but if you have like one adult and one teen, that's gonna make you have 2 rooms at least, because I bet that they don't really want to share room in the best of worlds anyway. So yeah, I wanted to have at least quite a few apartments with 2 bedrooms so that I could have that. So I actually extended this house to be a bit further back than the first 2. So that is actually along the same line, or what to call it, that the garden space was for the ground floor apartments in the first 2 houses. So there's not going to be a backyard for this one, but yeah, instead I could make a bigger apartment, and I think that that's a very nice exchange. So in this apartment building, it was actually 4 apartments, which is the maximum, of course, for the number of apartments you can have in the same building. And again, the ground floor and the first floor are the ones that gonna have the access to cars, and then the uppermost ones are not gonna have that. So that's just too bad for them. It's not gonna be possible for all of them to have access to cars, unfortunately. And yeah, here again is gonna be where I struggle with the layout, because now everything looks different and I have a lot more size to work with. But I also have the limitation of the first floor that I need to make sure that they have access to the stairwell that leads down to the parking space, and that it also makes sense where that door is located. So that limited it as well. And then at the second floor, I actually put in 2 very small apartments. So that's going to be for 1 sim each, probably. Very small ones. Yeah. But they're pretty cute. Those are 3 by 4 bedrooms. And that's what I was talking about earlier, that if you use a particular type of bed, you are actually able to squeeze a double bed into the wall slightly, so you can still have the same usage properly. And I made the walls a different color in this one to make it stand out a bit. And yeah, dividing the rooms. I had more space to work with here than I was thinking I would have. So yeah, quite a bit to work with. And I actually like putting in doors on diagonal walls if I can, because the diagonal walls aren't very easy to work with when you furnish. So if you have a door there, that actually frees up the space around it somewhat, I feel like, at least. So yeah, it works quite well to have it like that. Of course, recoloring the stairs looks so much more fun and nice when the footage is sped up. Yeah, it's not that nice when you actually sit down to do it, but it looks nice after. The result is always worth it. So yeah, again, this part of it is a lot quicker now that I've already done it twice. I know exactly what I can expect and how I should do it. So, and that was where I put in the invisible fences as well. It wasn't very easy for you to see, no doubt, but that's what those movements of the mouse mean when nothing is happening, that it's invisible fences. And I made the plants a bit different in this house. I decided to put in topiary at the front of the house instead for this one. And the outer walls obviously is a red brick instead of a grey brick, so that also makes the house look a bit different from hood view. And unfortunately in this house there was one wall that I realized after I forgot to paint, but don't worry about it, I found it out and I fixed it after. So it's all in the correct color now when I'm gonna start to use it. All right, and then we're moving on to the last house in the row. And yeah, it actually looks pretty much identical to the last house. And I built it very similarly as well. But I didn't make it 4 apartments in this one, I made it 3 again. So there's going to be a little bit more sizable apartments in this one. And yeah, of course, the biggest apartment is going to be the top floor, because it doesn't have that little 2x3 room with a stairwell for accessing the driveway. But ironically, it's going to be the cheapest one just because it doesn't have that driveway either. So it's technically a smaller lot, or a smaller apartment, that is. So yeah, this one actually ended up having 3 good-sized bedrooms, and I potentially can move in the group of 3 roommates into that one. They for sure want to have an apartment together, I think, and they would need to have 1 room each. I don't really think that it would be very nice for 3 guys who is just roommates to share rooms if they can avoid it. I think they would want to have their own bedrooms. So that's the family that I'm thinking about moving into that apartment right now. And it would kind of make sense for them to not have cars either straight off the bat while they are starting out their lives after university, basically. And yeah, again, the things are moving so much quicker now that I know what I'm doing. In this apartment, I actually decided to change out the carpet that was there from the start. I didn't really like that yellowish carpet, so I went for a beige one instead. And that looks a lot better. But yeah, I try to keep the coloring of everything a little bit different again in this apartment as well, to make it feel like it's a different house when I move into this. And yeah, I realized down the line that I had made the stairwell too small. So I changed that once I realized it. And I was actually spending a bit of time previous to this just staring at the windows and trying to figure out, like, why are they so tight together? It kind of doesn't look right. Why is that? Turns out it was because I had made the stairwell too small. So that's why. Yeah, it was resolved. Yeah, putting in the fences again, making it all look very uniform from the outside, even if it's very different from the inside. So that's also nice, I think, when you build a city, that you make the houses look like very similar to each other with small differences. But when you actually go into the house is when you see the differences in like number of apartments and what layout it is with the rooms and so on. So that makes it look very nice from hood view, but then you also have a different kind of space to work with when you actually play the game. So that's nice. It's so enjoyable to watch the building come alive with the lights, I think. Yeah, that was the last of the buildings finished. So this is what it turned out looking like. And I actually ended up also putting in some hood decorations next to this lot, because the sort of piece of land to the right of this lot is a very awkward size. So yeah, I ended up putting in a sort of makeshift parking lot next to it, to make it feel more like a city, I suppose. So this is the inside of the apartments for the first building in the row. And yeah, I think it's nice to take these sorts of pictures and go into like first person view to check out like what it would look like when they are checking out the apartment and thinking about purchasing or renting or whatever, signing the contract. So this is what it would look like to them walking around in the building. I think it's pretty nice. I'm not sure which of these I end up liking the best. Let me know what you think, if you got the favorite. I sort of kind of think of them like one big unit because I built them all at once. Maybe that's a weakness. Yeah, I can definitely see my Sims living in these apartments. It's going to be a lot of fun to figure out how to furnish them as well. It's gonna be a bit of a challenge though, because I haven't had the time to get to know the Sims yet, so I suppose it's gonna be a little bit generic to start out, but you can always change that down the line once I get to know the Sims better. So yeah, that was the first part of this renovation mini series before I actually started Let's Play, and these are the first kind of apartments that my Sims are going to be able to live in. And yeah, I really actually enjoy what they turned out like. So yeah, I look forward to continue with this and figure out what other kind of houses I need to build before I can start playing. And I hope that you enjoy this too. Thank you so much for watching and take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.